Hello and welcome back again. Day 5. Here we go. My name again is Tomlin's Nyback. Those who know me know my real name, but Tomlin's Nyback is just a play on words to get you thinking about about the name, how it fits in with this 365-day personal challenge towards racial change. The racial change I'd like to see is not so much any groundbreaking new work towards racism in America or anything like that, but I'd like to see us thinking more, as we spend our money, as we interact with the public, as we move around and about in the world. Get some housekeeping items out of the way. Behind me, you'll see the hashtag us2 symbol there. You plug that in when you're on your social media or whatever. It'll take you to another community that speaks probably better than myself on these issues. This is off the cuff, unrehearsed. I'm just having fun doing it 5 days in a row. It's pretty good. It's almost like when I quit smoking as I put those days together. I'm informed by a man named Dr.Claude Anderson. This is one of his books, is outlines a plan for Black America to become competitive and uh, recognized, taken seriously here in America, which we're not. We're kind of pushed aside, and a lot of that stems from our relationship with slavery way back in the old days and all that. Um, so if you want to understand what I'm talking about and where this information and the zeal is coming from, please read his books. Another one of his books that I'm coming out of is A Black History Reader. This was the first book of his I read. 101 questions you never thought to ask, and trust me, I never thought to ask a lot of the stuff that's in there. But I had some issues in my spirit as I get older, as I try to break barriers, break through, grow in America. I'm finding resistance, and these books help me understand what that's about. Also, he wrote Black Power, White Wealth, Search for Power and Economic Justice. Illuminates more of the issues of being black in America. Another text I'm coming out of, some fiction written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, a very popular, famous book, although nobody reads it. It's almost like the Bible, you know. Everyone's got a Bible laying around. Everybody's heard the names of stuff, but nobody understands. I mention her book because I feel like it's a good description, although it's fictional, of the life of a slave in America. Her voice is no doubt abolitionist, so it's biased, but I believe it's accurate. I think anything that gives voice to what was going on back then, from Frederick Douglass, Alex Haley's Roots, is appropriate. Although I think her book gives a better idea. He had a different thing going on. Anyway, so that's a little bit of the housekeeping. I want to say at this time, I want to give a shout out to China. I'm not a big fan of China, but they have just reached a milestone for themselves as far as space exploration. They have landed on the dark side of the moon, and they're doing things on the moon. They're exploring and growing as a nation and stuff. Uh, Probably a lot of their economy rests on the Chinese products. I bet you there's a connection economically between their space program and what is uh, sold in America, what we find in Walmart was one of those stores. You might find me mentioning China often, but you know, they landed there. So now we go to the moon. You turn the moon over. You want to say made in China. Okay, so that's my little plug there. I'm sure as the professional comedians have probably maxed that out already. Today I want to talk about something you might be like scratching your head about this subject, but I think it ties in well with what's going on with race in America, race, the roots of race and slavery and things like that. And I want to talk today about um, global warming, believe it or not. You know, and you say, well, what's global warming got to do? There wasn't a big uh, manufacturing, a big industrial base back in the 1600s. We weren't belching out pollutants in the air. We weren't digging up and drilling and pulling up these fossil fuels in a great way back then and spilling them out into the atmosphere and into the oceans and things like that. But I think there's a connection because global warming, part of the roots of global warming is this idea that these corporations, these big um, industrial magnates, think people like Exxon, BP, any of the oil people. I live near the railroad tracks, and I've seen tons of coal going back and forth on these railroad tracks. I used to actually go to some of the coal mines and the furnaces that generate electricity. I used to be a truck driver, and we'd pick up ash, the remains of the result of burning that fossil fuel. Tons of ash and tons of ash. And what they did with it is they mix it with cement. It's an ingredient to make your roads and the barriers, anything cement is there's fossil ash fossils in there that's been burned, and I think it's a uh, good way instead of just dumping it out somewhere. Freeze it in a mold and make a road. It's something that's going to last for a little while. So I used to haul a lot of that stuff, tons of that stuff, 40,000 pounds at a clip when I was driving trucks. So that's the connection there. Now, I want to say it because of the mining and the aspect of this idea of this uncontrolled usage and um, implementation of fossil fuels into our ecology, into our atmosphere. We're now experiencing some issues with global warming. And there's been, I remember as a kid, I haven't heard this term in a long time, but up in the Great Lakes region, we used to hear about acid rain and how there was some chemicals in there. The rain was toxic and it was had an impact on cars and the paint jobs and things like that. Didn't hear much about that. We hear how efforts by the government and ways organizations want to persuade big industry to you know use filters and find ways to put less pollution into the air and into the land and things like that. But it's just the mighty dollar drives these industries and they just go wild with it. That's the same way that the slaves were treated. back as slavery was maturing here in this nation, but we didn't, because it was a human apparatus, humans machine out there doing the work. We didn't have that, but it's this. I believe it's the same pressure, it's the same force. Just driving blindly, just getting the profit, getting the money, getting all the, you know, all the benefits as they take these resources, refine them, and throw them out and about into into the Earth's atmosphere. So it's a definite. It's the spirit of industry. It was alive and well back in the 1600s through the 1700s through slavery, and now that mindset of the white powerful establishment is now coming to fruition. And now they're incurring some penalties. I live in this world. I'm sure I've got right call now a carbon footprint is what a lot of people are concerned about. I've got some good friends. They want to uh, leave as small a carbon footprint as they can, and what that means is um, they want to recycle more, and use electric cars, and all that stuff to reduce putting pollutants in the air, reduce contributing to this. Our polar ice caps are melting. And it's interesting, this became a political issue, and this side didn't believe it, this side pushed it. Al Gore was a major proponent of trying to get the word out, but nobody listened to him too much. Um, but now we're listening. The science community is convinced. There's not too many people in the science community that disagrees with global warming. That global warming is happening, but the majority of the science community believes it. I watch a lot of the Meet the Press and things like that. Chuck Todd did, and ended at the end of the year's kind of special, brought all kinds of experts on to talk about global warming, which is kind of why I'm talking about it today, um, and tying it in to Black issues. Okay, so I said at the top of this piece, this industry mindset to just go and get, regardless of the consequences, to put um, to get these resources and use them, sell them, refine them, make their billions and trillions of dollars, and now we've broken the earth. Uh, one, we had a chance to look at this seriously back in the 30s. And when I say look at it seriously, I'm saying we have this chance to, as Americans, America, I wasn't born back then, but America had the opportunity to say, look, we need to be more serious about what we're doing with the land, what we're doing with bringing up these resources out of the ground and things like that. And America kind of did. They have agencies, and the government has departments to look at these things and try to curtail the damage to environments. But back in the 30s, you can Google this. You can look up the Dust Bowl, and it was about a 10-year span. It was a combination of over cultivating the land. This happened in the Midwest, and some droughts that came through. And so you can just imagine, if you've never heard of this. So the Dust Bowl. So they had these consistent dust storms that would just inundate the Midwest. Children had to move, animals died, insects actually thrived in it. I just read how some of the insect spiders, things like that, um, became almost at a plague level in some of these areas as this dust bowl. They thrived in that environment, right? And so, this something about America's constant desire to take and get more and more and more with no regard of the consequences. And occasionally it comes back on them. The Dust Bowl is one example. So now with the global warming, we're losing the ice caps, ocean levels are increasing, so we're losing shoreline up in Alaska. There's a town literally falling into the ocean out there as the erosion is swallowing up land, buildings. It's pretty sad. So with this global warming, there's a momentum to it. Now that we're talking, and I'm seeing experts, and we're talking seriously as a nation about doing something with it. But there again is something disappointing in America. Like we're okay with making we create a problem and we get a little kind of slap on the hand and we move on, and the consequences are very, very light for the upper echelon, the upper tier of the power structure in America. Is always this kind of thing always trickles down to those on the lower end of the economic spectrum. A case in point is 2008 to 2010 or 12, when Obama took office. The whole world was reeling in a lot of bad moves and judgment from a few wealthy people. And they were so big that the government bailed them out, but they bailed them out with money from us little folks. So we had to jump in. So with this global warming, you're going to see little folks, those on the lower end of the economic spectrum, somehow they'll be shouldering the burden of mitigating or adjusting for the impact this has on America. As kind of a side note, now that the ice caps are melting, land is being exposed, especially in Antarctica, and Russia and China are, they're looking to make their bid on those areas, and so tensions are growing about control of those areas. Vast resources are probably just waiting under those areas to be exploited. I have my fears about the penguins and the polar bears and whatever wildlife has been living there in its kind of sanctuary environment. But there's already been pressure there. But as resources are found, that's going to put all that in jeopardy. The wildlife, the land, things like that. The world was formed or made, created, or whatever you believe about that. And I believe those resources there, but those resources were, I believe, for everybody. We were to share them and be wise and all that. But that's a little idealistic. You know, there's profit to be made. And if you remember what I said, maybe in some of the earlier videos, that part of the European mindset, anyway, is that to see unused resources um, is to claim them. They see a patch of land, they believe there's resources, gold, diamonds, oil, coal underneath the land, whatever. Then if the people there aren't using it, then they feel they have the right to go in and take that. Um, but because it was done greedily and no accountability, now there's an issue. So on one end of it is, the negative. It's a negative consequence of free labor, of overmining, of not paying attention, um, of not sharing. You know, not being equitable with so much wealth, which is the problem that Black America faces. We see all this wealth and opulence going away, being absorbed, but we have to pay into it. It's how we get around in our vehicles, our lights, and everything. So we pay into this system. But our lives stay on more or less a horizontal economic track. While we enrich, we send our money forward, upward, to into a system that's not giving back and not reciprocating our support of them. All right. So now the news about global warming, probably it's not all bad. I think for Black Americans, we have a chance to maybe create new technology. It's too bad we are not, how can I say, as industrially fit to um, create some jobs, or find a way to benefit, profit as a group of ourselves, to um, take advantage of this circumstance that has not reached its zenith yet. It's even if we turned off all the pollution causing situations on the earth, there's some momentum and inertia. So we don't know yet what this thing is going to look like in its full fruition, right? So, and that is probably many years away. So I think there's opportunity, because the coastal areas of the United States are changing. There may be some opportunities there. There for tech, as far as monitoring or how to take advantage. Because with the polar ice caps melting, that's fresh water coming in. So what does desalination of our oceans mean? Like the changing saltwater levels, as this fresh water is being introduced into um, into our oceans. What about the new land? What's really there on the land? Are there Could there be dinosaur bones, and maybe some cure for diseases? One movie that was out actually a few years ago seemed to indicate Now it's a fictional movie but that with the melting of the ice caps, it had exposed an ancient disease on people, right? So we don't know what this. I mean, some of that some of the ice that's melting is thousands of years old. You know, so but on a positive note, how can blacks as a group come together, and not be the cleanup, not be the general labor of what's going on. You look around, and especially in my city, Hispanics they're in the unions and they are building the skyscrapers and the buildings. They got the skilled jobs and they're doing well. And mostly Black Americans in that construction industry are doing general cleanup, general labor, some grunt work. I did that because I don't have the skill in electrical, plumbing, pouring concrete and things like that. It's just something that's never come my way. I'm not I'm not faulting actually the Hispanics because they came, the blacks weren't there doing that kind of work. So that's a whole nother discussion. But I, it'd be sad if blacks couldn't get in front of global warming and corner the market on some service or product as this thing reaches its zenith. It's going to have a parabolic shape to it. It's going to go up for more years, and hopefully we'll get it as the earth corrects itself. And it'd be nice if this was an opportunity for blacks to overcome. So there's the tie-in with global warming. It's a result more of unfettered gleaning of these resources, white power, the industrial complex is just in there digging and throwing these things out into the earth. Um, um, with no accountability on the one hand, which is what happened with black labor. Um, and then on the other hand, can blacks use this as an opportunity to get ahead of the curve, you know, to to break ground, to come together as a group and be forward, be lead the pack, you know, and put that in our community alone. It's a big task. We got a long way to go, actually, as far as unity and consistently growing and resisting white, um, the white economic power. We've got a long way to go, um, but at least for me, I can resist it. I can be aware of it and do my best um, to not participate and begin putting my resources into my community. So there it is, global warming. See me again tomorrow. We'll see what we'll look at. Again, I don't know. This is off the cuff. We got plenty. We got 400 years of material to wade through, and I'm sure I'm not going to begin to break the tip of the iceberg on it. So there again, I'm Tomlin's Nyback. Thanks for watching.